What happens when one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses faces off against a talk show host who thinks he can ambush her with personal attacks on live television? Tonight, we're diving into the explosive showdown that had everyone talking. The moment Jennifer Lawrence pushed back hard against Stephen Colbert's relentless questioning, ultimately reaching her breaking point. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments. How do you think it all went down? The Late Show studio buzzed with energy as Stephen Colbert wrapped up his opening monologue to thunderous applause. The crowd was excited, expecting a fun, light-hearted interview with Jennifer Lawrence. But as the applause faded, Stephen's smile shifted. Just slightly, but enough. His tone turned sharper. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Academy, award-winning actress Jennifer Lawrence, he announced with practiced enthusiasm. Jennifer appeared, glowing and confident in a sleek black dress, waving to the standing ovation. She eased into the guest chair, relaxed and ready for what she assumed would be another enjoyable conversation. Jennifer, welcome back to the show, Stephen began warmly, though there was an unmistakable edge beneath his words. Thanks for having me, Stephen, she replied, her genuine smile lighting up the room. So, let's talk about your new film. You play a woman navigating some pretty dark psychological terrain. Tell us about that experience, Stephen said, sticking to the expected script. Jennifer launched into her prepared talking points, discussing her preparation, the emotional challenges of the role, and her excitement working with the director and cast. Her passion was clear. That sounds incredibly demanding. Stephen nodded, but then his expression hardened. Speaking of demanding, I need to ask about some reports circulating online, he said, leaning in with the tone of an investigative journalist rather than a late-night host. There are serious allegations about your behavior on set, how you treat crew members. Jennifer's smile faltered. Confusion flickered across her face. I'm sorry, what reports? I'm not sure what you're referring to, she said. Well, there are anonymous sources claiming you're difficult to work with, making unreasonable demands, creating a hostile environment. Stephen pressed, ignoring her defense. Jennifer shifted, clearly uncomfortable. I'm not sure why you're bringing up gossip instead of discussing my actual work. These sound like tabloid rumors, not serious journalism. The public deserves to know who they're really supporting when they buy movie tickets. Stephen shot back, mock sincerity dripping from his voice. Jennifer's voice rose slightly. The truth? I've been in this industry over a decade, built my reputation on professionalism and collaboration. I don't understand why you're ambushing me with unsubstantiated claims instead of having a real conversation. Sensing he'd rattled her, Stephen pushed further. All right, since we're on the subject of truth, what about your recent comments on pay equality in Hollywood? Some say your activism is just a publicity stunt, hypocritical given your privileged status. Jennifer's jaw tightened, visibly holding back. My advocacy for equal pay isn't a stunt, Stephen. It's about fairness and justice for all women in this industry. Not just me. I've taken pay cuts and supported legislation to prove it. Stephen's tone grew more confrontational. But critics say it's easy for someone who's already made tens of millions to lecture others on fairness. Don't you think that's a bit rich? Jennifer's famous composure began to crack. It's rich that you're attacking me for trying to make things better for others. I could easily take my money and stay quiet, but I choose to speak up. Because it's the right thing to do, Jennifer said firmly. Steve smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. Some would say you speak up just to stay in the headlines. The tension in the room thickened. What began as typical celebrity banter was turning into something far more uncomfortable. Jennifer glanced at the crowd, then back at Steve, her face a mix of disbelief and growing anger. "Are you seriously questioning my motives for advocating equality?" she asked, her voice low but sharp, a clear warning Steve chose to ignore. "I'm just asking the questions people are thinking," he replied with feigned innocence. "Isn't that what good journalism is about?" Good journalism? Jennifer's voice sliced through the studio air like a knife. "Steve, this isn't journalism. It's tabloid gossip dressed up as tough questions. Honestly, I'm disappointed you'd stoop this low." Leaning back, clearly enjoying the stir he'd caused, Steve said, "The audience deserves to hear all sides, don't they? We can't just ignore the elephant in the room." "What elephant?" Jennifer's patience snapped. "You're relying on anonymous sources and vague allegations. Where's your evidence? Where are your facts?" "Multiple sources have come forward," Steve said smugly. "Are you saying they're all lying?" She shot back. "Because without names, without verification, without any proof, this is nothing but character assassination. This irresponsible media behavior ruins careers based on rumors." The audience fell silent, the tension palpable. Many shifted uncomfortably, clearly uneasy with what they were witnessing. But Steve pressed on. "All right, let's talk about something concrete. Your relationship with director David Russell. There have been reports of heated arguments on multiple sets. Care to comment?" Jennifer's eyes flashed. "My working relationships with directors are just that. Working relationships. Creative differences happen on every project. Trying to spin normal disagreements into scandal says a lot about your interviewing style." Steve consulted his notes with theatrical precision. "Witnesses describe more than creative differences. Shouting matches, walkouts, threats to quit." Jennifer laughed bitterly. "More anonymous sources? Do you realize how cowardly this is? Hiding behind unnamed gossip to attack someone sitting right here?" Steve shrugged mock defensively. "I'm just doing my job." "Your job is to entertain and have meaningful conversations," Jennifer snapped. "Not ambush guests with hit pieces disguised as interviews." Steve's frustration showed. "Maybe if you were more honest about who you really are, we wouldn't be having this conversation." "Who I really am?" Jennifer's voice was incredulous. "Steve, you don't know me. You've spent your time reading gossip blogs instead of researching my work, my charity, the relationships I've built." "I have done my research," Steve insisted. "And what I've found is someone who shows one face publicly and acts very differently behind closed doors." Jennifer suddenly stood, startling everyone. "Enough! I came here to talk about my film and have a professional conversation. Instead, you've turned this into a character assassination." "Sit down, Jennifer. We're not done," Steve said sharply. "Oh, we're absolutely done," she replied, deadly calm. "I won't sit here and let you destroy my reputation with anonymous gossip and your desperate ratings chase." "This is live TV," Steve said, trying to regain control. "You can't just walk away when the questions get tough." "Watch me," Jennifer said, standing tall and glaring. Steve turned to the audience with a theatrical shrug. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when celebrities face the hard questions they can't handle." That was the final straw. Jennifer's composure shattered. The truth? I've spent my career treating people with respect and professionalism. I've used my platform to advocate for causes that matter. And the truth is, you ambushed me with lies because you're desperate for attention. "That's not true," Steve protested. "Prove it." Jennifer challenged, her voice ringing through the stunned silence. Name your sources. Show your evidence. If you're really about journalism and truth, then practice it. Don't peddle tabloid garbage. Steve fumbled with his notes, clearly unprepared for this pushback. I don't have to reveal my sources to protect them. Convenient, Jennifer said sarcastically. Very convenient that your sources need protection when they're spreading lies about me. The studio was captivated, many uncomfortable as the verbal battle unfolded. Steve made one last desperate attempt. Jennifer, I think you're overreacting. This is just normal interview questioning, Stephen said, trying to sound casual. Jennifer's laugh was sharp, without a trace of humor. Stephen, there's nothing normal about what you've done here tonight. You've violated every principle of responsible journalism and basic human decency. I'm just holding you accountable, Stephen replied, but his voice lacked conviction. Accountable for what exactly? Jennifer's voice rose steadily, growing stronger. For anonymous rumors, for being successful, for speaking up about important issues. If you want to hold someone accountable, start by looking in the mirror. Stephen tried to interrupt, but Jennifer wasn't done. You used your platform tonight to spread unverified gossip, attack someone's character without evidence, and turn what should have been a professional interview into a personal vendetta. If anyone deserves accountability, it's you. The studio fell into deafening silence. Stephen glanced around, desperately searching for support from the audience. But all he found were uncomfortable stares and disapproving looks. Jennifer stood tall, voice steady and clear. You know what, Stephen? I've been in this business long enough to recognize a setup when I see one. This entire thing was planned, wasn't it? You never intended to have a real interview. Stephen shifted nervously in his chair, his carefully crafted persona cracking under her accusation. I don't know what you're talking about. This is just how interviews work. No, Stephen, Jennifer cut him off sharply. This is how ambushes work. Real interviews involve preparation, research on actual projects, and achievements. Questions that serve the audience, not your ego. The audience exchanged glances, many nodding in agreement with Jennifer's assessment. The energy in the room had shifted completely, slipping away from Stephen. Jennifer, please sit down so we can finish this. Professionally, Stephen urged again, though his voice lacked real authority. Professionally? Jennifer's eyebrows rose in disbelief. You forfeited any claim to professionalism the moment you attacked me with anonymous gossip. Instead of discussing my work, Stephen glanced helplessly toward the producers in the wings, searching for guidance. They looked just as stunned as everyone else. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot, Stephen said, attempting to salvage the interview. Why don't we start over and talk about your new film? Jennifer's bitter laugh echoed through the studio. Start over? Stephen, you can't unring this bell. You can't spend 20 minutes attacking someone's character and then pretend it never happened. I wasn't attacking your character, Stephen protested weakly. I was asking legitimate questions. Based on what? Legitimate sources? Jennifer shot back, her voice rising again. You keep hiding behind anonymous gossip like it's some kind of journalistic shield. Real journalists don't work this way. Stephen fumbled with his note cards, clearly struggling to regain footing. The public has a right to know about the people they admire. The public has a right to accurate information, not tabloid speculation disguised as fact. Jennifer responded immediately. What you did tonight isn't journalism. It's character assassination. And frankly, it's beneath the platform you've been given. The audience was riveted, watching in real time as the guest dismantled the host. Many openly supported. Jennifer even applauding her pointed responses. Stephen made one last desperate plea. I think you're being overly sensitive about some pretty standard interview questions. That was the moment Jennifer lost all composure. Her eyes blazed with fury as she stepped closer to his desk. Overly sensitive? She repeated, voice dangerously low. Stephen, you just spent the better part of half an hour trying to destroy my reputation on national television, and you think I'm being overly sensitive. I was just doing my job, Stephen muttered lamely. Your job, Jennifer exploded, is to entertain people and have meaningful conversations with interesting guests. It is not to spread unverified rumors, attack people's characters, or turn your show into some gossip rag masquerading as legitimate television. Stephen glanced around frantically. He had lost control, not just of the interview, but of the entire room. The audience was clearly on Jennifer's side. His crew looked uncomfortable. His guest was systematically dismantling his credibility in real time. Jennifer, I think you need to calm down, he said. Perhaps the worst thing he could have said. Calm down. Jennifer's voice could have shattered glass. You spent 30 minutes ambushing me with lies and rumors, questioning my integrity, my professionalism, my motives, and then you tell me to calm down? She turned toward the audience, clearly making Stephen even more uneasy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly the kind of behavior that makes people distrust the media. This is what happens when entertainment shows pretend to be journalism, but abandon every ethical standard real journalists follow. The audience erupted in applause, overwhelmingly supporting Jennifer's words. Stephen looked mortified as his own audience applauded his guest's criticism of him. Jennifer, please? Stephen tried once more. Please what? Jennifer cut him off sharply. Sit here and let you continue this character assassination? Pretend what you did tonight is acceptable behavior? Enable your desperate attempt to create controversy at my expense? Stephen's face reddened. Whether from embarrassment or anger, no one could tell. I think you're completely overreacting to some simple questions, he said weakly. Jennifer laughed harshly. Stephen, you accused me of being difficult to work with based on anonymous sources. You questioned my advocacy work and called it was a publicity stunt, Jennifer said sharply. You suggested I'm hypocritical and dishonest. None of that was simple and none of it was based on facts. She paused, locking eyes with the camera. And you know what's really sad? I came here excited to talk about a project I'm passionate about, to discuss the craft of acting, to have a real conversation about meaningful topics. Instead, I got ambushed by someone who thinks tabloid journalism is acceptable behavior. Stephen made one last desperate attempt to regain control. Well, this has certainly been an interesting conversation. Interesting? Jennifer's voice dripped with incredulity. Stephen, this wasn't a conversation. It was an attack disguised as an interview. There's a huge difference. She started walking toward the edge of the stage, clearly preparing to leave. Panic flashed across Stephen's face. Jennifer, you can't leave. We're live. She turned back, fixing him with a look equal parts disappointment and disgust. Stephen, you ended this show the moment you abandoned basic journalistic ethics and human decency. I'm just making that official. Completely unprofessional, Stephen said, voice cracking slightly. Jennifer stopped dead in her tracks and slowly pivoted, her expression devastating. Unprofessional? You want to talk about unprofessional behavior? She strode back to his desk, her presence commanding the entire studio. Unprofessional is ambushing a guest with anonymous gossip. Unprofessional is using your platform to spread unverified rumors. Unprofessional is attacking someone's character without evidence or accountability. Stephen opened his mouth to speak, but Jennifer wasn't finished. Unprofessional is violating the basic trust between host and guest. Unprofessional is turning what should be an entertaining conversation into a personal vendetta. And unprofessional is then having the audacity to call your guest unprofessional when they refuse to participate in your character assassination. The studio was silent except for Jennifer's voice, which echoed clearly to every corner of the room. So yes, Stephen, someone here has been unprofessional tonight, but it wasn't me. With that, Jennifer Lawrence turned and walked off the stage, leaving Stephen Colbert sitting alone at his desk. The audience burst into applause, openly supporting her exit. The sound of their clapping filled the studio, as Stephen sat frozen, unsure how to proceed. As Jennifer disappeared into the wings, Stephen looked straight into the camera. His usual confidence shattered. The charm and wit that had made him a beloved late-night host were gone, replaced by the uncomfortable realization that he had just been thoroughly dismantled by his own guest on live television. The audience's applause continued as the camera held on Stephen's stunned face, capturing the exact moment a talk show host's ambush spectacularly backfired, creating one of the most uncomfortable and revealing moments in late-night TV history. What do you think about Jennifer Lawrence's response to Stephen Colbert's ambush tactics? Was she right to call him out so directly, or should she have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about those Hollywood interviews that go completely off the rails.